thank you all again for joining me on another episode of The Art of Comic Writing. I'm your host, Jorge Medina. That's George with a J. And I sincerely thank you all for coming on board once again. I have a great guest and a great show planned. So, what are we going to talk about today? What if I told you that I'm always learning and I'm always looking to learn? I'm ridiculously inquisitive and I ask tons of questions, which is why I started this show. And every time I have a guest and we sit down and talk shop, I always walk away with a new nugget of information. And I hope that you do too. I hope that this is also helping you guys out. Something one of my guests says, is something that I've never considered. And that's what I love about asking questions and being willing to learn. It's like, all right, it's like asking for recommendations online about where to go to eat or what book to read. Today on the show, I'm going to be asking my guest a few questions, including what sources would he recommend to make us better writers? Plus, we are going to be giving him a writing prompt, like we always do on the show. Okay, without further ado, I'd like to introduce a man who was a newspaper reporter for 30 years before retiring to pursue film acting, professional singing, and his lifelong love of comic book writing. He and his 21-year-old son Jake are writing partners, helming the Tinsley Boys Shared Universe, a line of comic books published by Jason Duke's Scattered Comics. The TBSU's most notable titles are Night Owl, The Blonde Assassin, Genius, and Alternative Narratives. Please welcome Mr. Ben Tinsley. There he is. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good, man. It's good to be here.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you coming on.
My pleasure.
Yeah, for those watching, you guys know how this works. We have Ben here on the show. We're going to talk about writing. I prepared a few questions. We're going to, have a little conversation. Before he leaves, I'm going to hit him with a little writing prompt. He doesn't know what the writing prompt is. It's going to be a surprise. So, and the way the writing prompt works is 15 minutes, sit down, write a scene, write whatever it is you want to write, a poem or whatever, based on this writing prompt for 15 minutes, just to get the creative juices flowing, maybe when you're stuck one day and don't know what to write. And we go that way. All right, cool. So why don't we start from the beginning here? The first question I have for you, Ben, is feedback difficult to take as a writer?
I probably have, I'm probably more inured from negative feedback in my head with writing than I am with acting, because with acting, you just put it out there, it's raw and you're like, oh, and you want to, as people say stuff that's negative, but with the writing, I mean, really from the first time you put something out there and other people read it, they've got something to say about it. So, really when it's writing, I'm just so happy that they chose to read it, that I try to take what they say in stride. But man, you say that I can't do Hamlet, so singing's like that too. I'm much more raw with my non-writing art,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, in the intro, I mentioned, and you told me you were a news reporter for 30 years. So I'm assuming you're used to editors and the feedback
all the time.
editors,
I mean,
right?
like from my parents to my first editor to readers. Readers who don't like. I mean, I sort of got. When I was a reporter, I covered. I forget. He was a conservative that was thinking about running for president, Republican guy, and he showed up and he made a bunch of vague statements that may have been about George W. Bush, but I wasn't 100%. But I couldn't just put that it was about. So I tried to get a copy of his script. I couldn't get it. I went interviewed everyone who listened to it. Just say, you're pretty sure that's what he's talking about, right? So I ended up, doing a pretty informed story. But then people writing, in the reader's part goes, I think the Star Telegram has an agenda. This reporter obviously went in there wanting to hurt this guy, and I'm just like, what are you talking about? But it was more like, it wasn't like he criticized my Hamlet. It was more like, you're out of your mind, dude. Like, people have this idea when you write stuff that you're part of this Illuminati, it's more entertainment for me than anything else.
Right. Yeah. 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 Now let me ask you this. So feedback. Right? Obviously, we're going to get it regardless. We put something out there. We're writers. We're going to put stuff out there. We're going to get the feedback, whether it's positive, whether it's negative. What happens when you disagree with the feedback?
Let me give you an instant. I think I don't know if I told you, Jake and I, with our Night Owl comic, in addition to our comic book, we put out like one or two one-page web comics a month. It's more humor-oriented with the same
Mhm.
character. And we actually did an origin story with Night Owl. And this guy, in the origin story, Night Owl saves a baby from being crushed by a train. It's that same
Yeah.
argument in Hancock, where do you throw the train up and move the person? There are ways to do it without property damage, but Night Owl ended up destroying the whole train to save the baby's life with
Ooh,
his
yeah.
body.
Right.
And this guy wrote this diatribe. I mean, it wasn't a diatribe. He was really serious about, so he's going to destroy all those people to save that one baby. I mean, we just got into it, and I explained to him, well, for one thing, that's a Texas train, and it's usually carrying. This one was carrying goods, and we
Right.
pointed out that the only guy that was live on the train was was holding the baby at the end, so he made it. So we're talking
Mhm.
property damage, and I'm like, well, would you rather a whole bunch of stuff die or a baby
Yeah.
be saved? And anyway, Hancock addressed this when there was one of the characters was caught on a train track, and Hancock had to he flipped the car over to get it out of the way of the train, and
Right.
he had people all around him saying, "You could have done this, you could have
Right.
done that." I mean, I'm
Yeah.
like, these are readers. This is stuff like
Yeah.
I'm kind of I was into it though, you know. I mean, it's like
Right.
this guy cares enough about what I wrote to get
True.
this passionate about it, you know. So, and that's the other thing. I mean, usually the people that make me want to cry are my directors or my editors when it comes to, not my editors, my directors when it comes to singing or acting, but with the people that comment on the comic book writing, not the news writing, they're into it, and
Yeah.
the most you can really hope for is to get people that just dig what you're writing enough to get emotionally invested.
That's true.
And when I said diatribe, I shouldn't have said that, because this guy really was concerned that a superhero would destroy a whole train to save a baby's life, you know. And
Yeah. Yeah.
the whole thing was him. I was trying to make a point about Night Owl getting past his grandfather's murder by saving other people's lives, and that was the whole point. And he got that. But
Right.
I mean, just that, from now on, whenever I do a train in a story, I always think about that. You know, it's like the criticism stays with me. It helps me. You know.
Yeah,
So,
but you know what? But I mean, to your point, and I think that that's a great way to look at it. He cared enough to make sure that he pointed that out to you, and that
passion.
is that exactly that, because I feel like, I see a lot of shows, or even like on YouTube, and I'm guilty of this too. I go on YouTube and I want to see discussions about the Disney Plus show I just watched last night, right? Because I want the discussion. I want to hear it. So, and sometimes I complain that we don't hear enough from our fans about the stuff that we are writing as smaller indie publishers, right? So when you get somebody like this, it's feedback. It is feedback, and whether you disagree or agree with the feedback, the fact that it's there is what matters.
First put out our first web comic. It was just a one pager before we put out the full comic book. And Jake didn't want to do this, but I talked him into a potty gag at the end of the story, you know. And this this woman who read it got so offended by it. We were like these unknowns, but she dragged our comic onto the Gail Simone's website and had all these people talking about how this
Whoa.
entitled father and son did all this crap. And it even involved I think the guy that created Black Lightning, Tony Isabella, was talking, and they were all just talking crap about us. And that just,
Wow.
I was offended because, I mean, that's my kid that they're, Jake, and plus
Sure.
I'm the one that did the thing that they were complaining about. Jake wanted to go with a more power, more superhero-y ending, so I kind of felt like I set Jake up on that. But I fought those guys. I said, dude, he's 12 years old. They're like, if you're going to put this out there, you're going to take the criticism. I mean, it was
Wow.
nuts. And
Yeah. Well, yeah, that is the negative side of it too. I mean,
yeah,
that is
but I
the
think
other
about
side
the
of it.
train guy and I feel much better. So
Yeah, there you go. Focus on the positive. Now let me ask you this, Ben. Do you ever work? And I think I may know the answer to this already, just from the intro itself. But do you ever work on multiple projects at a time? And if you do, how do you keep them straight? How do
well,
you keep those
are we
things
talking
straight?
about comic books?
Yeah.
We have to. I have Jason Duby, who's the artist in a lot of our projects, but my publisher on all of them.
Right.
He keeps it in order. And because the artist has to be paid and stuff has to be done production wise, he keeps track of that. And really, it ends up what comes out as what is in line. And it's an imperfect system, but you can't just bang out a comic book. You have to
Yeah.
do it methodically. And Jason's the king of methodic methodically creating something. I don't know,
Yeah.
but he keeps it straight. I don't know if I could do it without his organization,
Yeah.
because I'm just the idea guy. Jake's the idea guy. We throw stuff out. Jason or one of his artists takes what we were writing and makes it real, and it's a whole process. But yeah, you got to respect that production line that
Right.
Scattered Comics has going.
But so I mean, you're a creative person. You obviously, I'm sure you do tons of things at one time at some point. So from the creative side, not so much from like, like you said, like obviously there has to be a way to keep, production schedules in line. But creatively, when you're creating your projects, how do you keep the ideas in your head? Do you write them down? Do you have like maybe a notepad that you keep of ideas? And then that turns into an outline, and then that turns. How do you keep everything in order, I guess?
What I try to do is I think of the story idea and I try to write it so that I'd read it. So there's dirty jokes and there's silly puns and there's just stuff that I'm in love with. And once I'm in love with the idea, and then Jake brings his, well, I think we should do this and that. This is if we're working together.
Mhm.
Then when we finally figure it out, then we take turns doing the script together. And
That's
when you
cool.
take that separately, same process, only instead of consulting with Jake, I just consult with Ben. And Jake does the same thing. So I
Right.
think Jake does it a little differently than me because his process is different. I think he writes as it comes to his head, where I try to live it in my head almost cinematically and
Mhm.
then translate it into the caption process. So
Do you find it hard to do that? Like to go from cinematic to still images on a page?
writing is a pain in the ass. I mean, physically writing is a pain
Yeah.
in the ass. Just thinking of it, conceiving it, that's the joy.
Right.
But I have to go through this pain of making what's in my head on paper, and then I have to use the 30-year journalist writer in me to translate. I'm interviewing myself. I take what's in my head and I try to put it into caption form. I try to make it make sense to what I was thinking originally, and I can't always do it exactly like that. But I think the best thing for that process is our webcomic, because we have like 4 to 6 panels, one page. We got to get a whole thought in there,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's a different process.
Yeah, it is. It is a different process. And I think that when you're working with an artist, and obviously you have a good relationship with the artist that you're working on, you've worked with him
Yeah,
for,
Jason's
for
a
a while,
brother. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's almost like he knows almost what you're thinking, what he's thinking, and so it helps when you do that. I think it's tougher when you're working with somebody for the first time, where you kind of have to fill each other out. And it's a good thing that you guys have this going. I'm actually looking forward very much to the Night Owl book that you guys coming out, and I'm gonna have to check out the other books that we mentioned on that list. But
Yeah.
all right. So you have these ideas that live in your head. How much time do you spend researching or studying, or what does that research look like when it comes to your stories?
As my reporter side of me, I when I run across a concept or something that I don't immediately know, but I know that it's cool enough to include in this, I like put X's in my head, and then I go and I look it up and I make sure, like if I'm doing like police procedure, I was a cop reporter for most of those 30 years, but
Oh,
you
cool.
know, I run across some new things that I didn't immediately know, so I go look that up, and then I go back to the X's in my head and say, okay, forensics, dictates this, and but you kind of have to change reality a little bit, because sometimes the actual real thing doesn't fit in the cartoon world. You have to simplify things, and
Mhm.
but I try to get it as close to the way it really is, and if it isn't, you can tell it's a joke. So
Right, right. So, but there is a good level of obviously research that you do on all your projects. I mean that
yeah, I mean,
you you
I try to like not put weird, misleading stuff. If I talk about the Illuminati, there's a joke in it. I don't try to say,
right.
yeah, there's actually Illuminati. They're coming to get you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
This is a
You
world of
keep
magic and love, not the real world.
Yeah. Do you go and look for like maybe reference shots for your artist? For example, your story takes place in a city in Texas that maybe
Oh yeah,
Jason isn't familiar with.
any geography is looked up
Yeah,
copiously.
yeah.
I originally, when I first created this universe, when I was like 19, before my son was even a twinkle in my eye, I merged cities together. I did stuff like I took Fort Worth and Dallas and called it Metroplex, and I
Okay.
called Waco, Texas, Taco, Texas. But then when Jake came along, we felt it would be cooler if we took the world around us verbatim and then made it superhero-y. Like Fort Worth is our main city, but it's like Fort Worth by way of Gotham City. It's all super cool and all the history that's real, but we try to show the audience how awesome it is. Not
Right.
some people get turned off by Western stuff, but we show them what we love about it, and hopefully they'll love it too. So, but it always
Right.
has to be accurate. I mean, there's a habit some people have of putting misinformation in stories that people who read it just take it for granted it's the real thing, and then they go and they quote it like it's knowledge, and they look silly in front of people. So I try to make sure that you learn a little bit about what the world by virtue of reading about it. Maybe you don't even realize that I've taught you something.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that, because if I go to Fort Worth, Texas, and I've read your book and I see something in the book, it's almost like, oh my God, this is where this took place. I remember a few years ago, and I'm still working on it with a buddy of mine. I live in New York, and I live very close to the Bronx, New York. And so
Nice.
the story takes place in that area. So one day, him and we just went out and just took photos of, whether it's a subway station or whether it's, housing project or a complex or whatever, because those things are going to make it into the book. And it's kind of cool to see those things in the book after you've done your photographic, reference shots for the artist. And those help, because especially if the artist is not from that area.
For one thing, Jake and I both grew up reading comics by NYC writers, and we figured that you guys are the most legit. So
Yeah.
no, I mean, really, I mean, but yeah, like for instance, my Blonde Assassin, we did like
Mhm.
a backdrop of Las Vegas. So Jason spent hours
Wow.
copiously translating, a photo that I gave him. And the thing is with Fort Worth, we're trying to make it as super cool as possible. Like it's the center of the magic and super science in this universe. Um, so what I do is I remember like things that I remember from when I was a kid in Fort Worth that no longer exist,
Mm.
and I put them up there. Like Fort Worth used to have this huge clock that rotated at the top of a building. That's no longer there, but my Fort Worth, it's still there. So
Oh, cool.
so if it's not something that exists now, it's something that used to exist.
Yeah,
So
that's cool. Yeah, no, that's nice when you put that little touch. And then again, it makes it's almost like a personal touch for your stories. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. But all right, so we're gonna take a little break here. You're gonna hear a word from our sponsor, and when we come back, we're gonna talk the question of the day, which is what's coming up next. So just stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you're an indie creator looking for a home for your comic book, graphic novel, short story collection, or novel, then you've come to the right place. Any One World is a full-service publisher and distributor which can take your creator-owned project and showcase it to the world. We offer two primary distribution channels: digital distribution, where we'll sell your book in our digital bookstore; digital and print distribution, where we'll sell your book in our digital bookstore and distribute through physical bookstores across the UK, USA, and Canada. In addition to distribution, Any One World can also work with you to publish your book. We'll publish your book digitally, helping you source artists, edit, format, and publish your book in digital format. Digital and print. We'll publish your book digitally and produce and distribute print copies of your work. Digital, print, and merch. We'll publish digital and print copies of your book and then work with you to design or distribute products and add-ons such as t-shirts, posters, and more. On top of all of this, we can offer additional paid services where required, specifically cover design, editing, and formatting. Unlike many traditional publishers, Any One World gives indie creators maximum control and flexibility over publishing and distribution. So if you're looking to partner with us to distribute existing books or publish something new, read carefully through the information below and fill out a submission form.
All right, welcome back, guys. Thank you so much for checking that out. We are going to move into the second half of the show here. We're going to be talking about the question of the day. The question of the day for you, Ben, is what sources to become a better writer would you recommend? You have a young writer who's out there watching the show, and damn, how do I become a better writer? What are some of the sources that you would recommend?
Well, I think the easiest, I mean, we'll start with easy and get to harder. The easiest thing is to get comics done by a writer who I have, learned from. In this case, the late Denny O'Neil, who's a, uh,
Yeah,
a DC writer and did some Marvel too.
yeah,
I studied his writing my entire life and his comics in Iron Man and Daredevil. He's most famous for his Batman work.
right.
The style of writing, the framework, all of it. Just reading each comic to love it, and then going back and looking at the technical stuff he did. I always felt like he was in a classroom somewhere teaching me how to write. So,
That's cool.
you just go back and look for anything with Denny O'Neil in it. He did this run on Green Arrow and Green Lantern, or Green Lantern, Green Arrow, uh, several decades ago that just was so good. It just broke the pre-internet mindset. I mean, it was stuff that had never been done. So he took his college education and his life education. He brought it into his writing. Now, that's Denny O'Neil. Now, there's other stuff you can do. I would suggest you get familiar with reading real news stories and just pay attention to the way things are sourced.
Okay.
There are journalism books that you can read to kind of get an idea. I would suggest, if you really want to be a good comic writer, find a school newspaper or someplace and just write and write horribly. This is what Denny O'Neil told me in an interview that I had with
Cool.
him. I was like just all, oh my God, Denny O'Neil. He said you need a place to go where you can write badly. Really be horrible, and that's the only way you get better. Because you build. I think it answers your question from earlier. Build scar tissue. So go someplace and that has nothing to do with the comic writing. Because if you go right into the comic writing and you try to do something and you don't get there, you might get discouraged from it for the rest of your life. That's what it does. But if you go to a place that you can take or leave and learn from it, just basically have people grade you, learn subject verb agreement, learn everything about that. Don't read anything on the internet because no one knows grammar at all. Know how to, I have a character in the Night Owl comic called the Apostrophe. And basically, he's the villain that's responsible for all these misuse of apostrophes everywhere you look.
That's
He's
amazing.
one of Night Owl's worst villains. He just really is a walking apostrophe. But you need to really learn that stuff because if you don't have a grasp on the grammar, your thoughts are going to get lost. I mean, I've had directors who would write a script and I could not tell heads or tails what he was talking about because he misspelled everything. The grammar was off, and he'd get mad because I misread something he wrote. But I'm like, well, I mean, I never said this because you don't want to get fired from the cast. But you can't expect people to get your thoughts unless it's very clearly explained.
Yeah.
So,
and especially in comic books, right? Because you are telling the artist what to draw, and if you can't convey that clearly to the artist, you're going to get a mess. You're going to get a mess of a book. Yeah,
I think probably the most cinematic comic we did was when Night Owl ran out of chocolate, so he went to this chocolate factory. But we made it like a Heart of Darkness or Apocalypse Now. We had Night Owl emerging from a swamp, but it was chocolate. Looking around and we had him go through this jungle to get to the shop. It was in in North Texas. I forget exactly what part of Texas it was. It was actually a chocolate company that my friend of mine owns, and we had him meet my friend, and then the owner of the chocolate shop goes, you nearly missed me, Night Owl, because I was about to leave town. And Night Owl, whose face is filled with chocolate, goes, the horror. So I mean, if that makes people want to go back and read Heart of Darkness or see Apocalypse Now, I mean, you got to do your homages, and that really helps. Like Chris Claremont did homages to the Divine Comedy, actually did direct references to it as there is in an issue of X-Men. In direct response to that, when I was a teenager, I read all three Divine. I mean, it was hard reading, but I did it because the X-Men were in it. I mean, not that one, but they were in a comic. So and that's why like The Simpsons or Family Guy. Sometimes they do riffs on things that make you want to go watch what they're riffing. So it works like that.
Yeah. No, I remember when I was in college, and one of my English professors was big on. He called them odes, right? It's an ode to something else. So like when we were reading, whether it was like you said, the Divine Comedy, or whether we were reading the Odyssey or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you know, it's okay to, like you said, homage those works because they are classics, right? And like you said, and then a younger reader comes out, reads what you wrote, and say, "Hey, I want to find out more about that," and then it just keeps on going. So that's cool that you mentioned that because I do, and I tend to do that. I tend to, you know, you're not copying. It's not copying. You know, I'm not saying plagiarize.
It's not plagiarism.
Thing.
It's
you know
not,
what I mean?
it's odes and homages are old ways of riffing and you know, I think there's kind of a plagiarism fever going on right now. People are making accusations about plagiarism about stuff they don't really understand, you know, or aren't plagiarism. But any homage or riff is done in good faith to help the reader. So
no, those are really good sources, man. Like things that I never even thought about. Like go, you know, be bad somewhere else so that you're better here. That's kind of cool. That's very cool.
And in that sense, I'm really glad that I did 30 years of writing because that's 30 years of getting edited, of screwing up, of coming back and rewriting, and eventually your brain gets wired that way. So you become a much better writer. So
and the tough skin you've built through the years, nothing phases you at this point. You know what I mean? It's like
I would never say that. I'm sure if you really tried, you could make me try. But yeah, I mean, it's. I wish I had the same scar tissue for my acting as I have for my writing. So,
but I have to really try to make you cry at this point.
Yes, you do.
Like, you're not just gonna be. Oh, you said that to me. I can't believe it. I'm never gonna write again. You know what I mean? Like it's not gonna happen.
No.
It's not gonna happen. Oh man, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So Ben, I have one more question. It's a bonus question for you. Okay. The bonus question here is, what's your favorite YouTube channel and why is it Get Your Meds?
Do you ever listen to Ace Vane on YouTube?
No.
He's this amazing writing comedy guy. He takes like all those old Super Friends cartoons that are so horrible and bad and horribly written that you don't even want to acknowledge they exist, but they're still a part of your past. And he puts clever new dialogue in it with insane sexual entendres and like just stuff that it's nuts. And he uses real footage. Real cartoon footage. He does the Spider-Man with the old Super Friends, with the Justice League, with Batman. He just kills it. Batman, oh my God. But it's hilarious. But it's like someone found something to do with my past.
Right.
And bring it back. You know, I'm positive it's so good that eventually someone's going to start converting his conversions into comic book or something. Ace Vane, man, you can't go wrong with Ace Vane.
All right. I'm gonna have to check that out.
ACEVANE, right?
Ace. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, okay. So this is the time where I'm gonna give you your writing prompt.
Okay.
All right. And for those watching, like I said earlier, you guys can also get in on this. 15 minutes, sit down wherever you are and write down whether it's a poem, whether it's, it's a scene you want to write, prose, whatever you want, however you want to write it. Here is your writing prompt. You ready, Ben? The writing prompt is an abandoned boat in a swamp. An abandoned boat in a swamp. That's it. How did I get there? Why is it there? What the heck is a boat doing in a swamp? Think about it. Let your imagination run wild. You know, write it down, however many pages you want in 15. I don't know how much you can get done in 15 minutes, but just write it down. Write it down, just for fun, just for ish and giggles. But Ben, this has been amazing, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I will tell everyone that you do have a Kickstarter that's going on right now. So the show notes will have all of the information for you guys to check that out. It is about it's the Night Owl. The Night Owl comic that you were
Night
talking
Owl
about.
2-in-1 is the name of this issue.
There you go. So so make sure you check that out. Ben, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you coming on, and we're definitely going to stay in touch, you and I. And that, everyone, was Ben Tinsley. Thank you so much, Ben, for coming on and dropping some science. He really gave us some nice insight into writing. I mean, this is a man who was a reporter 30 years. That's a lot of time writing, and that's a lot of experience. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing some of the stuff. What did you guys think? What did you think about the sources that he suggested for becoming a better writer, especially in the comic book world? What did you think? Let me know. Put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you know when I'm putting these out. And don't forget to share this channel. Share it with other writers. If you're enjoying the content, please let me know. Suggestions on questions, things of that matter, do it. Don't forget that there was also a writing prompt on this show, as we always do. And the writing prompt in this show was an abandoned boat in a swamp. An abandoned boat in a swamp. Think about that. What can you write? What can you do? Put it down. Remember, the writing prompt is 15 minutes. Sit down in a room by yourself, in a coffee shop. I don't care. Sit down 15 minutes, type it out. Whether it's a short story, whether it's a scene, whether it's a page in a comic, whatever you want it to be, throw it down. Email it to me. My email will also be in the show notes. Don't forget that also in the show notes is Mr. Tinsley's Kickstarter, which is live right now. So please support the Kickstarter. Go into the show notes, click on that link. Make sure you check it out. Get yourself involved with the writing prompt. And don't forget, keep writing. Peace.